I've been reading about a case you may have come across in the press in the last few days, which is particularly disturbing. It's the case of a Japanese man, I'm just looking at the newspaper here, who has the unfortunate record as having been the world's longest serving death row inmate. I think the most practical thing to do would be just to read out this article directly. It's not very long, bear with me. And also apologies in advance if I mispronounce Japanese names. It's not my forte to get Japanese names exactly right, so apologies in advance for that, but I'm going to read this out directly. Please bear with me because the details are important. For more than 45 years, Iwao Hakamada has woken up each morning wondering if it was going to be his last. Today, however, the world's longest serving death row prisoner is a free man sleeping in a hotel after a Japanese court said police evidence against him was probably fabricated. A former factory worker and professional boxer, Mr. Hakamada, 78, was convicted of murdering a family of 4 in 1966, largely on the basis of a confession he says he was coerced into making. Since his conviction was finalised in 1968, he has lived in solitary confinement, waiting to be hanged. He has always maintained his innocence. Yesterday, Mr. Hakamada, who is said to show signs of dementia, emerged from a detention centre looking frail and bewildered before stepping into a waiting car, accompanied by his 81-year-old sister. His lawyer, Katsuhiko Nishijima, said Mr. Hakamada at first could not believe he had been freed. His first reaction was, "That must be a lie." It only sunk in after he got out of the car and walked around a little. Mr. Hakamada was in his 30s and living in Shizuoka, south of Tokyo, when his boss was robbed and murdered, along with his wife and 2 children. The killer set the house afire and fled. Police detained Mr. Hakamada, who had been a live-in employee of the family for 3 weeks, without a lawyer. He signed a confession after 20 days of close interrogation, but later retracted it, insisting he was beaten and told to give the statement. A panel of judges nevertheless convicted him of all 4 murders in 1968. 6 months later, one of the 3 judges resigned, saying the conviction haunted him. Yesterday, Shizuoka District Court said Mr. Hakamada should be retried because items of clothing and other evidence presented by police may have been fabricated. His lawyers say DNA tests on 5 items of blood-stained clothing believed to have been worn by the culprit proved the blood was not his. It is unbearably unjust to prolong detention of the defendant any further, said the presiding judge Hiroaki Murayama. The possibility of his innocence has become clear to a respectable degree. Prosecutors have 4 days to appeal the decision. Although Japan incarcerates fewer people than many Western countries, it has been widely condemned for what rights campaigner Nobuto Hosaka calls the peculiar cruelties of its death penalty. 8 people were executed in Japan last year, and nearly 130 people are believed to be on death row. According to a 2010 government poll, about 86% of Japanese back the death penalty. Mr. Hakamada was not executed because of the appeals process. The Supreme Court took 27 years to deny his first appeal for a retrial. His second appeal was filed in 2008, with the court finally ruling in his favour yesterday. He is only the 6th death row inmate to receive a trial in Japan since the Second World War. Amnesty International, which has campaigned for years to have Mr. Hakamada released, said it would be callous and unfair for prosecutors to appeal to the decision to free him. Rosian Rive of Amnesty said that Japanese authorities should be ashamed of the barbaric treatment Hakamada has received. Okay, I read the whole thing there because I'm not sure if I can make a direct link to this particular report. I'd like to say I agree with the rights campaigner Nobuto Hosaka about the peculiar cruelness of the Japanese system. And I also agree with what Amnesty has said, that it would be callous to retry this man. Firstly, the circumstances of his trial are very questionable. The fact that it was behind closed doors, and he says that the confession was beaten out of him. It seems to me that when it's his word against the authorities, he's going to have an unfair advantage. And that's something that was obviously never taken seriously. I mean, why was there no investigation into that, about his claim? What's disturbing is clearly Japan hasn't moved forward that much since the 1960s in terms of its attitude, both at a legal level and a societal level. It's particularly shameful given that Japan's a democratic country and these sort of severe human rights violations shouldn't be taking place in a democratic society. The rationale being that in a democratic society there should be accountability and transparency. Well, the Japanese legal system clearly isn't transparent. Um, I don't know absolutely if this man is innocent. He may have committed the crime, I don't know. So obviously a serious crime was committed. 4 people lost their lives. It was a terrible crime. Someone done it. He may well be guilty. But it's obvious that there's serious doubt in his case. And I wouldn't be half surprised if the police basically framed him to get someone. I mean, if it was a businessman that was killed, this is purely my own speculation, I should say, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was an influential person and they wanted a quick conviction. That would not surprise me. I think that's really quite disturbing. I mean, it would be disturbing if he was executed, but it's disturbing that this man has spent over half his life, almost half a century. It's hard to comprehend that sort of figure. I mean, I remember seeing the film Hurricane, about an American boxer who was jailed for 27 years, I believe it was, for a crime he didn't commit. That seems like an eternity. Nelson Mandela was in jail for 27 years, a very long time. This guy, 48 years. That's a hard figure to comprehend. I mean, I'm 28. That's almost double my life. It's staggering. And Japan should be thoroughly ashamed of this. Now, before anyone accuses me of picking on Japan, I'm well aware that there's other countries with the death penalty. For example, the United States is a very shitty record as well. Well, in my opinion, any country with the death penalty should come under scrutiny. I do believe the death penalty amounts to state-level killing, and this is coming from someone who believes I regard myself as conservative on crime. I believe that people should pay for crime, but I don't believe it should be the extent of state-level killing, which is what the death penalty ultimately is. And what this case shows that with the death penalty in place, there's a real chance that innocents could be executed. There's something I've never understood about the Japanese system, which is why it is so secretive. There's something particularly callous and cruel about that. Because seemingly the Japanese justice system isn't content with executing people, it has to punish their families as well, by doing it behind closed doors. So they're not just punishing. Granted, some of those people may well be guilty of the crime they've committed. I'm not saying they're all innocent. But by doing it in that way, behind closed doors, they're actually punishing the family of the guilty, who, the family may well be innocent, and they may have, what they're doing actually is punishing more people. Also, that statistic, 86% of the Japanese supported, that's disturbing. I do find that disturbing. My impression is the Japanese are intelligent and overall decent people, so it troubles me that in so many other ways, a progressive society can be still retain something which most of the world has abolished. That is a fact. Most of the world no longer has the death penalty. I believe over two-thirds of countries have now abolished it, or at least haven't used it for a very long time. Unless I'm mistaken, Japan and the United States are the only democratic countries that use it on a regular basis. India did execute someone last year, but that was an extreme case. So I think there needs to be massive reforms of the Japanese justice system to seriously, and this case alone should bring that about, because this is a shameful record that Japan has, that this man has served so long. It doesn't matter what compensation they give him, he's 78 years old. His life has been stolen from him. And I say that in the sense of him being innocent, because personally I think he's innocent. Okay, I can't say for a fact he is, but you have to question the circumstances of his trial, i.e., why the interrogation was behind closed doors, and the fact he has for half a century insisted his innocence. Now, most people who are guilty, at some point just admit it and give in, because they want closure with themselves. But to insist on innocence for half a century, to me that's a strong statement of, I'm not God, I don't know if the man's innocent or not, I don't know. But the circumstances of this case are very unsettling, and it should be a stark warning to Japan to seriously reform its system. Now, I'm aware, for example, China executes far more people, but China is a one-party state. It's an authoritarian state. Japan's supposed to be a democracy, and in a democracy, you're meant to have transparency. But clearly, there's not transparency in the Japanese justice system. No, I have to say Japan does have low violent crime rates, so they're doing something right. I don't deny that. But I'm not convinced that their current situation with the death penalty is something to shout about or to hail as a good thing. It's troubling. And to any Japanese viewers who may be getting insulted or nationalistic about this, I would say exactly the same to British people who would want to bring back the death penalty here. And there are people who do. There were innocents executed in this country, I'm convinced of it. And that's barbaric. When you have an innocent person put to death from a flawed legal system, I mean, honestly, there's no legal system in the world that can be called perfect, but at least systems that don't have the death penalty, there's a chance that people can be reprieved. And it just seems to me that the circumstances of this case, I hope those officers that interrogated this man, if his claims about being beaten are true, I hope they have been haunted by that, because that's just inhumane to treat someone in that way. And it's nothing to do with being liberal on crime, or like I say, I'm conservative on crime. I believe people should be punished for committing heinous crimes. This has nothing to do about being soft on crime. It's just a simple case of fairness and transparency. And it's a very disturbing case. It's good that he's freed, but it's far too late. I mean, he's an old man now. He's got dementia. He should have been freed a very long time ago. And it certainly seems to me that the circumstances of his initial trial are very questionable. So I think the Japanese legal ministry should learn from this, and also seriously consider its image in the world in terms of how callous and cruel its justice system is, in terms of the utter lack of transparency. I see absolutely no logic for that whatsoever. Okay, I understand there's a debate about the death penalty, and there are two sides to it, I understand that, but that still doesn't answer why it has to be so secretive. That makes no logical sense whatsoever. I mean, it just seems callous to the families of the condemned to do it behind closed doors and not even tell them. That just seems unnecessarily callous, because the families haven't committed a crime. So why do that? It makes no sense to me. Justice can't be about revenge, and the death penalty, in my opinion, is state-level killing. I'm aware there's heinous crimes out there, and if I lost a loved one to a violent crime, I'd probably want blood as well, but justice cannot be dictated solely by emotions. It just can't. It's good that this case has received widespread coverage, which at least is something. I mean, I'm sure there's dozens of cases in China that never get reported because of China's lack of transparency, and China's shameful statistic for having the world's highest rate of executions. And that isn't, I saw people justifying that earlier because it has the biggest population. That's a very phony argument. Because when you add all executions in the rest of the world combined, and then you add the populations of those countries, it doesn't add up, actually. So China's statistic in executing people on an industrial scale, by the way, not all of them are murders, many of them are for financial crimes. That is also shameful. I question any country that has a death penalty, including the United States. I question the state of Texas and how regularly they use the death penalty. And I'm very grateful we don't have it in this country. Okay, thank you for watching.